Hey, everybody. Welcome to Coach's Corner. Thanks for watching the show. I'm your host, Coach Tripp. We got a special guest today, Mike Reichenbach, Eagles linebacker, East Stroudsburg. Mike, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thank you, Paul. It's a real pleasure and an honor being invited onto the Coach's Corner. It's a
we're going to have a blast, Mike. We got so much to talk about. This episode is brought to you by Sandy Sansing Chevrolet. Go see the good folks here in Pensacola, over in Milton, or over in Baldwin County and Foley. Thanks for all the great sponsors. Mike, there's so much to talk about, but as usual, I'd like everybody to know your story from as far as you can remember. You're the second of four children, and your dad was in the service. Talk about growing up, your mom and dad.
Yeah, so my dad, my parents, when they got married, they were kids. They were 17 and 19, so they started having children right away. So it was kids having kids almost. And my older brother, I was the second oldest. So my older brother, my dad got deployed to Panama. So he was actually born down in Panama. And then I was glad I wasn't the first. I can tell you that, because it was Panama isn't like it is now. It was more of a third world country almost. So right. It was but he was deployed there, and then he came back to Fort Meade, Maryland, and that's where I was born. Mm-hmm. And then they were originally, my parents were from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So after my dad was done in the military, we moved back up to Bethlehem. So that's where my other siblings were born, and that's where we were raised, in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which was known as for a steel town then. It was Bethlehem Steel was the big manufacturer back then. But my dad was everybody worked. Yeah, my dad was a bricklayer, and he did work at the Bethlehem Steel at times. It was like those movies you'd watch. You'd go to pick up your dad, and all the steel workers are coming across the bridge with their hard hats and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But he was a bricklayer, and I was his labor when I was young. And I was mixing cement. They didn't have mixers back then. You had to mix it by hand. So I'm mixing cement, carrying brick, carrying block. And I said, Dad, I don't want to do this for a living. And he said,
no.
He said, you better go to college. I go, I don't know what college is, but I'm going.
Wow, that's a great story, Mike. Oh my gosh, I was at Alabama. My father had me work in a freezer at nighttime, the nighttime shift. And said, you want to do that the rest of your life? You better go back to school. Yeah. That's the same kind of thing. Did you play multiple sports in high school? Did you play baseball, hockey, anything?
Yeah, I played baseball. And then my football coach, I played football, of course, and my football coach was the wrestling coach. So they needed a heavyweight. So I had wrestled when I was young, but then I got away from it because it just wasn't a sport I took to. It just wasn't. So he said, we need a heavyweight. And he says, you'd be good at it. So I said, I'm 195 pounds. And where I live in the Lehigh Valley, wrestling is big. Lehigh University. I mean, it's a big wrestling town.
Oh, yeah.
So he puts me in as heavyweight. So I'm 195. I'm wrestling guys like 275. And they're just laying on you. There's nowhere you could go. And I'm just like, I don't know why I should have tried. I should have believed him. But that was my wrestling career.
So your high school team, talk about your high school team. Your coach was a big influence in your life. Was there a position coach that you really was a champion in your corner in high school?
Now I'll tell you what, it was interesting. I started playing football in Little League, of course, at about 8 years old. So my dad came home. I was a big, heavy kid. Mm-hmm. And of course, you usually got made fun of. And, it was always something, it wasn't like it is now, political correctness. If you were heavy, they called you, that's who you were. Yeah. And so my dad asked me one day, you want to play football? And I said, sure. So I started playing football, and it kind of got me accepted because I could play. I was bigger. And so I didn't sound like I loved football. It just got me accepted. So then, as I started to grow up, I played in junior high and then up into high school. Now we went to a big high school called Liberty High School, which was, I graduated with probably 960, almost 1,000 kids. So there was like 3,000 kids a class. I mean, about 1,000 kids a class. Wow. And so big school, but the football program, for some reason had fallen off. We didn't get a lot of guys out, but we played a tough schedule. There was one coach, because when I first went in 10th grade, as I started to grow up, I lost all that weight because I wanted to get rid of all the weight. So I got down to about 135 pounds. They had me as a defensive back. Well, me, I had no speed, so I was no way I was getting on the field as a defensive back. And then I found the weight room and started to work out, and I went up to my junior year about 165. So they moved me to defensive end, and there was a coach there named Coach North, and he was probably the first coach that made me to think I could play this game. He said, now, and he told me, and he said, listen, you're not a starter, but watch good players and watch what they do and learn from them. And that's when I started to become more of a student of the game. I started to look and watch guys that could play. And you know, I talk to kids now because we have youth ministry, and we talk to kids in the city, and we say, you know, most of you check out if you're not the starter. I said, and you miss all the things you can learn that while you're on the bench that prepare you for when your opportunity comes, you know? So he was that guy. And in my senior year is the first year I started. Actually, in high school, I was about 190. It was about 195, and I started at defensive end.
So you grew kind of late. You're a little late into the position. You haven't played it all your life, and then you go to East Stroudsburg State. I've spent a weekend in East Stroudsburg in Pennsylvania. You may not believe it, but Tom Murphy, Tom Murphy, our quarterback at Liverpool High School, went on a visit down there to East Stroudsburg.
Oh, okay.
And, so talk about your years at East Stroudsburg and tell everybody what conference you guys play in. And
yeah, we were in the Pennsylvania conference. So I wasn't highly recruited. I was the only, when I was senior year in high school, I think I made all city. So they had a city all-star team that played, you know, everybody from the area, local area. You got selected for an all-star team. I wasn't all state or anything like that. But so really the only school that really recruited me was East Stroudsburg. I mean, I had schools send you, you know, information, but nobody was really recruiting me. And there was a coach there named Denny Dowds, and who coached there for forever. I mean, he's just retired recently, but still is active with the university.
Denny Dowds?
Denny Dowds, Douds, Denny Dowds.
Okay.
And he was, you know, known. I mean, he'd been there forever. He was East Stroudsburg football, and he came down to Bethlehem and recruited me and said he wanted to make me a linebacker.
Wow.
So I said,
so you got in the weight room. How did you gain weight? To talk about that transformation.
Well, so when I was a senior in high school, I was 195. So I think by the time I was ready to go to Stroudsburg, I was up to 225.
Wow.
And back then they didn't offer the scholarships. It was affordable for me because you didn't have the money. Now, not that college was like it is now, but it was affordable. It was somewhat affordable, but it was a lot of money for us. So you get financial aid and you get all that. And it was a Pennsylvania school, and we play in the Pennsylvania Conference, which Division II, very competitive conference, very good football. Westchester, Kutztown, Millersville, and is the East, Bloomsburg, and then you go out west, you have schools like Indiana IUP, and there's just so at the end of the year there's a state game and they play each other east and west, and usually the team that wins that gets in the Division II playoffs. But so I came in and got in the weight room. He put me at middle linebacker. And of course, you know, we went to camp, and I think I was about 225 by then. And it's just a different look when you're used to playing defensive end on the outside. You're used to looking from the outside in. Now you got to kind of see everything. You know, you're in the middle linebacker. And so I came in after the first week. I said, Coach, can you move me back to defensive end? I can't play this position. And good thing they didn't take my word for it. They were smarter than me. So
he knew what was best.
He said, just hang with it. You know, he said, hang in there. He says, you'll be able to play. So I hung in there, and I think back then you had JV football teams, which gave you time to learn and progress, and you know, and it gave you time to get your feet wet. So we had a JV schedule where we played Army, Princeton. We played other JV teams, and my first JV game, I had 18 tackles and an interception. So they moved me up to varsity, and mainly just to play special teams. So my freshman year, I was playing just special teams and learning the position more, because there were seniors actually there that were there playing, some juniors and seniors starting at linebacker. So we had a really good football team. Went to the Division II playoffs in those years. But
did you?
So
oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was my introduction into college football. So
wow, you learn quick. Playing JVs. When I got to Alabama in 1980, I was on the JV team too. We'd play Ole Miss JV, Auburn JV, and it just gave you time because, even coming from a school like yours, Liverpool High School, we had 4,000 kids in my high school.
Yeah,
I tell people that down south, they just gasp. But you have good programs, but a whole nother step is college.
Yeah.
And it takes a while. Like even when I was a freshman in Alabama and I saw the varsity, and granted, Bama just came off back-to-back titles in 78, 79. But when they came out in scrimmage, I went, holy shit, I'm not ready for this.
You're right. Because the speed increases, the size increases, the impact increases. You're just the speed of the game is quicker each level you go up. And it was great that I had good coaches. Like Coach North started out, it was all technique stuff. He was very focused on technique. And that's why, like, even now, even as a pro, ex-pro, you watch the games and you look at foundational things. Like even as a coach, it was all about foundation because we had only 25, 30 kids, 35 kids on the team. So each kid had to be able to play multiple positions. It was all about leverage and power angles and dropping your hips and gathering your feet and having never being out of position. So I had coaches like that. My Denny Dowds was very big on technique. So even though I think my junior year, I went up to, my second year I started, my sophomore year, and I believe I was about 230, 235. But then my junior and senior year, I went up to 245, almost 250 at times.
Holy cow.
By that time, I was benching, I don't know, maybe 400 pounds. I was squatting all kinds of weight. And but they were very focused on fundamental angles, power angles, taking on the block, defeat the block, go to the football.
Mike, I still see that today. I see bad fundamentals. And you look at the Indiana team, You want to talk about technique over talent. Mike, you played in the NFL a long time, 8 years. When I ask ex-NFL or pro players for that matter, what would you rather have, talent or intangibles? What would your answer be?
I'd rather have the intangibles because the talent, like you have now, you have talented players, but they've gotten away from the fundamental things. Like everything every time you stepped on the field, there was two things you knew. You had to be purposeful, and there was going to be impact. And either you were going to give impact or get impacted as soon as you cross. So if you were purposeful and you knew, like in practice, you had coaches or you had people that were good teachers that they would say, not just, if you were a defensive back or safety, let's say, they wouldn't just say, here's how you stay square. Don't commit before the receiver. You have to wait. He might plant his foot, but did he commit? In other words, he doesn't commit till he takes that second step. Right. So you see these guys now, they take the first step, the defensive back turns and commits, then they break and they go the other way. He's out of position.
Exactly. So little things like that.
Yeah, they wouldn't commit to the second step. And so like linebackers, we read the blockers. We read offensive linemen. They took you to the football. Mm-hmm. So they stepped, you stepped. And then you attack, you take on the block, defeat the block, and then go to the football. Because you got to remember, these guys are paid to block you. So you might just run to the ball, but that lineman's coming too. And that's why you see these guys, they run to the ball and all of a sudden, they're getting ready to think they're going to make the play. And here comes this lineman, boom, and he takes them out of the play because you didn't defeat the block. So when we defeated the block, it takes a lot of inertia to get that 200 or 300 pounds going again. He's not going to be able to block you. Right. So we had coaches like that were basically saying, like I was saying before with the safety, it was like, don't commit. But it was also saying to you, if you were a safety, you knew you had to cover two zones. If it was cover two or whatever, you knew half the field to the sidelines. Right. Where do you have to start your lineup to be able to cover the sideline and the middle of the field? What was your speed? So they would work on that continually. So you always knew where you had to be when the play was coming. So
Talk about graduating and going into the NFL as an undrafted free agent, and talk about, as a undrafted free agent, was Philadelphia your first signing, and was it that because it was in your home state? Talk about how all that transpired after the draft.
Well, there's a big part there that what the biggest shift in my life was. I was in my sophomore year. I was kind of wayward, I just didn't have any football was who I was. I was out there partying, doing the thing, and I got in trouble in my sophomore year. And I was asked to leave the school.
Ooh.
So to take off a semester. So I went home and I was working in a furniture warehouse, loading trucks with sleeper sofas and all that. But I went to the weight room. And I was, I didn't know who I was. I was kind of lost my bearings because football that's what I did. And so, I just had to get back there. So I worked out. That's when I went up to about 245. I benching 400 pounds. I came back my junior year. And that got me, that's where I was honorable mention All-American. And then my senior year, I was first team All-American. Kodak and Associated Press. So wow. Kodak was the big one then. So that got me on the map. Wasn't invited to the combine because Division II wasn't like it is now. There wasn't social media, so you didn't have people. You had to show up. You had to come up on somebody's radar for them to know you were. You had to make a team. You had to do something. So All-American got me on the map. But I used to say to people, scouts, you didn't get invited. I said, scouts were driving by Stroudsburg and they needed gas and they pulled in and saw they had a college and they said, oh, let's go by and see if they got. So I was I wasn't invited to the combine. So I knew they said I could be a late round draft. And I
got the same story.
I watched the first day. It was 2-day draft. I knew just by the end of the first day, I said, I'm not going to get drafted. So I had about 5 teams that called me and were interested in me coming to the camp as a free agent. And the Eagles were one of them. People say to me, what's the difference between a draft pick and a free agent? I said, about a $2 million signing bonus.
Money.
Yeah, money.
Security.
So the Eagles were actually, the only team that's offered me a signing bonus, which was able to buy me a car to get me to Philadelphia.
Wow, what a story. What year was it? What year was this, Mike?
That was 1984.
84. I came out in 84 and I had 2 offers, $2,000 from the Cowboys and $1,000 from the Browns.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd have taken the money and gone to the Cowboys. Now, tell me about it. Tell me about it. So Eagles.
That's what I did. They offered me $5,000.
Wow.
Which bought me my car. Of course, it wasn't going to buy me a new car. So I bought a Delta 88 diesel. Now I don't know if you have a diesel car. There ain't many diesel cars anymore, but they're a little louder than the average car. So of course I pull into Philadelphia with they got their BMWs and their whatever, and I pull in my 88 diesel, and they're just like, oh boy, here we go.
Who is this guy? Who is this Reichen? Who is this Reichenbach guy?
Yeah, so we came
talk
in.
Talk about it.
Yeah, you come in and of course there was the draft picks. They had a solid linebacker crew. Then Jerry Robinson, who was really more of an outside linebacker, but they made him an inside linebacker. And then Anthony Griggs, another guy from Ohio State, he was there. And Reggie Wilkes and a guy named Joel Williams. They were the starting. They played a 3-4, and they were pretty. They only kept. They had backups. As a matter of fact, Bill Cowher was a backup.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, Bill Cowher was one of the backup inside linebackers.
Oh, he was my special teams coach in Cleveland in '85. The next year, he must have got hurt that year or something.
Well, what happened was I go to camp. There's 30 linebackers for 7 positions. Because back then they would bring 120 some guys to camp.
Yeah, only keep 7 linebackers. They only kept
Yeah.
7 DBs back then too, Mike.
Yeah.
Now there's 12 or
Yep.
13 linebackers, 12 DBs.
Yeah, but back then you only kept 48 guys on the team. There was
45 man
yeah,
roster.
40
Yeah.
and 3 on the what do they call the taxi squad or whatever
Right,
it was.
3. Yeah, 3.
But so yeah, your second team was as good as your first team. I mean,
Right,
because that was
right.
before expansion. You know, when you expand, of course, they expanded the league, make more teams. You take those second team guys that were just as good as the first team. Now they're starting somewhere else, and you dilute the talent. That's why you see such a drop off when a starter gets hurt. The second team guy's just not there. I mean, there's just not.
That's got to be it, because back when we played, there were only 1,300 guys in the league. Now there's 2,300, 2,400 guys. There's almost twice as many.
You definitely dilute the talent.
Wow, that's interesting. I always thought so too, Mike. So was Buddy Ryan there your first year, or did he come in after that to set in the 46?
He came in after that. So first year was Marion Campbell. He was there from Dick Vermeil.
No, wait, first tell how you made the team. How did you break through those?
Well, so every week, for me, it was always, I was never the most talented, fastest guy, quickest guy. So for me, it was just put your hard hat and go to work. I've been yelled at, screamed at, it didn't matter, especially if you're on a construction job with construction guys, they get pretty brutal, man. The bricklayers were not a politically correct crew. And so they used to flick their cigarette butts at you. And if you mix the cement too wet, they would dump the pan over and say, mix it again. It's no good.
Oh, they were brutal. Yeah, so you've taken the abuse, yeah.
Yeah, so you got kind of used to it. So you just got up and you just went to work, and there are a lot of talented guys, but there was a lot of guys that didn't know how to handle that kind of criticism because they're pretty cold, especially to rookies. I mean, as you come in and you're there to take their job, and we couldn't even get taped in the tape room. We had to get taped by some volunteer guy trainer that was probably just learned how to tape from college, and he'd tape your ankles, and then you would. So every day they would come around the Turk. You remember the Turk? We used to call him the Turk. He'd come around,
knocked on my door. Yeah, he's knocked on my door a couple times, few times.
Yeah, and you just hoped it wasn't you. And each one, I went a little further, and it came down that I was the last rookie linebacker. There was 8 left, and I was the last rookie linebacker.
Holy cow!
And back then you went 6 weeks, you remember. So we were pretty much 2-a-days, full gear, every practice you conditioned, every practice you hit. So it was physical, and it was which was right up my alley, which was good. I mean, I went to camp, and Mike Quick was a wide receiver. He was an all-pro. Yeah. So they ran a sweep one day in practice, and Mike was out at wideout, and you turn, you see him coming. It's a crack block. He's coming down from the outside in to block you. So I just turned and put a beat on and went right at him and hit him right square down the middle, and it lifted him up. He fell on his back, and he's laying on his back. And he said, "Rookie, do you know who I am?" I said, "I don't care who you are." I said, "I got to make this football team." Because I had a coach, my first coach was a man named George Hill. And George Hill coached with Woody Hayes at Ohio State. He was just as fiery and ornery as Woody Hayes. And I mean, he said he was all about hitting and, technique and leverage and making impact and
physical, being really physical.
Very physical. Yeah. And matter of fact, we went to play the Raiders one time in Japan, and the Raiders were laid back then, and they'd come out of the huddle, and George Hill would say, "You smack them down," and he'd get us all fired up in the first play. We'd come and hit them, and they didn't do that stuff in practice. They were laid back, and they kind of like, well, okay. They came out one more play, we hit them again, and then they went in the huddle and sat in there for like 10 minutes. They wouldn't come out. They'd say, "If you're going to do this, we're not going to engage with you. You're not doing this." So, but that was George Hill. So it was a physical camp. So it came down to the last game, preseason game, and I played pretty well. He said, Wilbur Montgomery was the running back then, he came up to me, and he's the first player that gave me positive reinforcement. He said, "You have a chance to make this team." I said, I gave him a big hug. I was like, that was the first positive words I've ever heard.
Wow.
But
Wilbur Montgomery.
Yeah, we played well. I played well, and then went home. They said, if you don't get a call, go home for the weekend. You don't get a call, you made the team. So I'm sitting at home, and you're waiting. Didn't get the call, so I helped hop in my Delta 88 diesel and head back to Philly. And
how far of a drive was it to Philly from your house?
About an hour and a half.
No way! It was only an hour and a half for your family.
Hour and a half, 2 hours at the most.
So what was the celebration like? What would you tell your dad and your siblings and your mom?
He just didn't know. He didn't know what to expect. It was like you have this working class family. You made the Eagles, and you're kind of like, okay, what does it look like? You don't know. I mean, until you actually get in and do it. So it was exciting. So it was interesting because I go down and I pull into the parking lot. I walk into the locker room, and Harry Gamble was the player personnel, and he says, "Mike, you got to go get your playbook." And I went, because that means you're cut. So I went, I don't understand, So I went down, and, of course, my locker is the last locker on the right side of the locker room. So I walked past all these guys that I went to war with and, hung out with, and went to the bars with, did all the stuff with them, and they actually turned their backs on me, not because they didn't like me, but they had the reality that could be them.
Yeah.
So I got my playbook, went upstairs, and they said, "Listen, Mike," he said, "we want to keep you, but one of the offensive linemen got hurt the last preseason game, and we got to make some shuffles." He said, "But we're going to make some moves and bring you back. We're going to keep 8 linebackers."
Oh, wow.
So I went home. He said, "Just keep working out." So I went home and started. By that time, I was working out 3 times a day. I'd go to the track, run 220s, 880s, for time. You had to make the time or it didn't count. You were breaking through quitting points. You'd go to the weight room for 3 hours, go back to the track at night and run stadium steps and drills. And I did that first week, second week, third week, fourth week. I'm like, this ain't happening.
Right.
And I said, what am I going to do? I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, because I didn't graduate Stroudsburg yet.
Right.
And so it's the first time I ever stopped running. I took off my shoes, wept some tears.
Right.
Kind of tried to get myself straightened out. Like, where am I going? What am I doing? And I drove home and pulled up in front of my house. Didn't know I was going to. And my mom looked out and she said, "The Eagles just called. They want you back."
God takes care of you at your deepest depths.
Yeah.
Doesn't he turn it around on his time, not your time?
Yeah. He had a plan. Wow. He had a plan for my life. And so what happened was so I get my stuff, I go back down, and what happened was Bill Cowher was the backup, and he had gotten injured.
Oh, no way.
He
got injured to give you your chance.
So I went down, and he was still on the team. He was still getting rehabbed. And right. Because I took a liking to him, because we were the ones that sat in the back. We were kind of like the sledgeheads that were just like hit people and butt up and hit people. And Jerry Robinson was one of those guys that would shift and move, and he was such a great athlete that he could do all that stuff and not have to butt up the guard and still make plays. But
talk about Coach Cowher, man. Talk about.
Well, he was the guy that went down on the special teams. He did everything he asked him to do. Physical player, just didn't get the recognition, of course, but was always solid and just a good guy. And I got along with him in camp. But then when he got healthy, they decided to keep me and cut him.
And he got into coaching right away. Marty hired him in 86.
He went to
85.
Cleveland to play.
Yeah, that was my rookie. Yeah, that was my rookie year. He was his first year coaching.
And he couldn't pass the physical because of his knee. I think it was his knee. Something
he went there to play.
From it. So that was, I think it was, who was it, Belichick? Was he there?
No.
Whoever the coach was, he got him in the coach.
Schottenheimer, Marty.
That's what
Marty got him in, yeah.
So he asked him to coach. And that's when he got into coaching.
Yeah.
So he used to, every time we'd play the teams he was coaching, I'd run on the field and he'd go, "I'm the only reason you're in the league." I used to laugh. But then after he went to the Super Bowl with the Steelers, I'd yell back to him and go, "I'm the one that got you to the Super Bowl."
You're the one that got him into coaching, Mike.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. That's hilarious.
So then I was, you're on the team. And so I knew then that I had to make it so they couldn't cut me again. Yeah. So special teams was the way you did it back then. And I had probably the greatest special teams coach of all time, Frank Gantz.
Oh, you had Coach Gantz as a coach?
The greatest special teams coach in America. He treated special teams. He said the special teams is a third of the game, he said. And he treated special teams like it was the most important part of the game, which it was. It was a huge part of the game.
It still is.
He would come in his meetings and tell war stories because he was an Annapolis grad. He went to Annapolis. Oh. So he would tell battle stories.
Oh, my
And so everybody would come into, even guys that weren't on special teams would come into meetings just to hear the battle stories.
Oh, sure.
And he would go through all the strategies and how they won and why they won and blah, blah, and he'd go and he said this one story he was telling and he goes, our guys were surrounded, they should have surrendered, and the Germans had them closed in. There's nowhere they could go, and they sent in a thing and said either surrender or we're going to kill you. And you know what they told him? And he didn't abbreviate. He said the words. He said they told him "F you." And he goes, now you'll never read that in a history book, but that's what they told him. That's
oh my gosh.
So he used to have a thing where he'd run down on a kickoff and he would hit. He said when a bomb hits, you hear it before it hits. It has a double clap, boom, boom. And he says then you knew you had to hit the ground. So we'd be running down on kickoffs, and he'd have that. He had the bullhorn and everything, but he would do the double clap, and we had to hit the ground. Like a bomb was going. And so, but he was the way he, you see these guys that go down on their coverage and they run around blocks, they run past the runner. We couldn't do any of that.
Right. No.
He used to do things in practice because you always play the way you practice.
Right.
That you couldn't, like if we were covering a punt. Or no, let's say we were blocking for a punt. He would say, you block that guy all the way down the field and you don't stop until the whistle blows. You don't come off the block. You follow him all over the field. I don't care where you go. So they would have us do on kick, punt return. They would punt the ball and we had to block them. And we had to keep blocking him and keep blocking him. He told the guys to keep running until they hear the whistle. So these guys are running all over the field.
Wow. They don't do those drills. They don't do those drills now, Mike.
Yeah, so we're chasing him. Like 5 minutes later, he'd blow the whistle. So by the time the game time come, it was like, this is easy blocking and during the game. I don't got to chase around the field for 5 extra minutes.
Mike, that's a sign of great coaches. I've played for 20 years. I've coached for 20 years. I've observed hundreds of different coaches. And, it's not rocket science how some coaches win and some don't. They just outwork the other team.
Yeah,
Coach O'Leary and Coach Bryant taught me that practices should be harder than the games.
Yeah.
And the great coaches grind hard enough where the practices are brutally tough.
Yeah.
And the game is a piece of cake, man. We just have fun during the games.
How
many coaches you've seen it? Buddy Ryan was like that. Talk about Buddy.
Yeah, Buddy was a character. He came in and we knew it was going to be because he had won with the Bears and we heard stories, but you could there's nothing like the real life thing and
character, the real life.
So he came in, he got the job and came in and you knew that there was going to be some changes. So he looked at everyone's film, he evaluated. So he calls me and this is my first meeting with him. And he said, Mike, I like the way you play. And he said, but here's what you got to understand. He said, you got to learn the defense because you got to make all these calls. It all happens on the field. It's all depending on what they come in and what we call. That's what you have to call to get everybody lined up. And he said, and you have to come in the greatest shape of your life. He said, because I'm going to run these guys till they drop. And he said, whoever drops, I'm going to cut them. And he said, if I can't change my people, I will change my people.
Oh,
so what he said to me.
Gosh, holy cow. I love the straight talk.
Yeah, so I started to run like a madman just to like I went from like 245 down to like 235, and I just tried to and so he gives me a tape. He gives me a tape and he says, "Now here's the packet." He gives me a game plan. And he gives me the game plan, he gives me a tape, and he goes, "Go home and learn these, be ready to make these calls." So this is the first meeting with him.
Oh my God.
So I take the packet home and all of it's just terminology. You don't know what it means, 46 cover, 46 blitz, 4-3 coverage, 4-3 blitz, all these calls. And so you're calling them and you're looking at the formations and you're calling them. And if they'd shift, you'd have to change the front. You'd have to change the coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm learning to learn. So I come in the next day and he throws up the tape and he starts going 46 coverage, 46 blitz, AFC coverage, AFC. And he would just go and I would just start spitting them off. Boom, 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 boom. I don't know if God blessed me with photographic memory or what, but I was able to remember him. And he goes, "Okay, great." And I thought, wow, I passed. And he goes, "Here's another tape. Here's a packet. I'll see you tomorrow." And this was the off season. I'm like, this is the off season, But he did that for a week.
Wow.
And he said, "Okay." He said that we're ready to go. We're going to go. He said, I'm going to make you a captain, but you can't fall because these guys, if they get cut, they're going to fall. So year before, their MAB, which is a paint company, did a promotional piece, a poster that had snapshots of every player on the team on one poster.
Right.
And so we went to camp, and as camp started going on, he was just cutting guys, boom, going. So we cut their picture out on the poster. So, like at the end of camp, it was like Swiss cheese, piecing it together. It was like,
you didn't want to be cut out the Swiss cheese.
He would come in the cut. He would come in the huddle to the offensive players, and there's that unwritten rule: you don't cut players below the waist in practice. And he'd come over to the offensive line, the offensive huddle, and he'd say, "Listen, if you do anything it takes to block that guy," I said, "if you have to cut him," he'd cut him. I don't care what it is. He goes, "I don't care if you have to chew his arm off, but make sure he doesn't make the play." So then he comes to the defensive huddle and he says, "They're going to cut you." And he says, "And if you let them cut you, I'm going to get rid of you." So understand this. So right away, he was setting up a fight.
Yeah.
So, first play, they'd come out and they'd try to cut you, and boom, it would start. Bam, boom, bam, bing. Everybody's fighting. He would just sit there with his whistle. This is his famous stance right here. And he would watch, and he would watch, and he would watch. And then about, 10 minutes in, he'd blow the whistle. He'd go, "Back to the huddle." And he'd go back to the huddle, and guess what? Second play, come out, boom. So you'd have like 30 plays in the script to get done, and we had about 3 plays. Because everybody's fighting.
Brutal practice.
And it was. And he ran us. I mean, we would start each practice with 2 55-yard ladders, which is out 5 back, out 10 back, out 15 back, out 20 back, out 25 back. We had to do that, and you had to do it in time. And you had to do 2 of those. That was the beginning of practice. And then you went to 9-on-7, which was the hitting drill, then 7-on-7, then team. And then at the end of practice, and this is in the heat, I mean, you're in summer camp, we would run, the last drill we would do is goal line. And he'd put us on the goal line, and he'd put the starting defense in the huddle. And then he would put up 3 offensive huddles. And he would say, the first one, we'd call the defense, the first huddle would come out, we'd do the play. By the time that whistle blew and the play was over, the second huddle was breaking their huddle. And he's get up. So that was for 20 minutes now, nonstop. So guys are getting in the huddle, and we had big guys then. Reggie White was, we had big guys. So they're sucking up all the oxygen in the huddle, and I can't spread out. I can't make the call because I can't breathe. And and then he'd blow the whistle. We thought we were done, and he'd say, "On the line, we have 110s."
Holy cow.
And then we would finish the practice with 110s, and you could run as many as 15.
You guys were in better shape than anybody you played against.
Yeah,
it was won a lot of games.
It was good, but it was, again, by mid-season you would hit.
Wear you out. Yeah, wear you out.
You'd have to regain. You would regain, but it was your legs were.
And we're toast, yeah,
definitely.
by the end.
So it
Yeah.
was good. We were too far one way. I think now they've gone too far the other way. But
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah,
yeah,
sometimes you overtrain. Yeah, you can overtrain and undertrain. Yeah, you have to have
yeah, no
a
doubt.
good balance.
Yep, no
I
doubt.
have a good friend of mine, Kent Johnston, strength coach in the NFL for quite a few years, and Al Miller is my strength coaches. And Kent Johnston was at Green Bay for quite a few years with Reggie White. Loved Reggie.
Yep.
Tell a story about Reggie White. What a
Reggie
great
White
person.
was authentic. He was a
Yeah.
guy, like I didn't grow up with God in my home, so and I went to a
Hmm.
denominational school, and God was kind of misrepresented to me. It was like this big stick in the
Hmm.
sky. Like if you're good, He's happy with you. If you're bad, He whacks you with the stick. And
Right.
I was like, well,
Right.
this can't please Him. And then I
Right.
went to the Eagles, and there was guys that called themselves Christians, but they were in the same bar rooms that I was in, at
Right.
nights. But
Right.
Reggie was the authentic, real deal. Like he loved the Lord, and I saw something different in him.
Hmm.
And he was an influence. Like he impacted guys because, guys, it's that the sport itself. There's so many variables and so many things tugging at these guys' hearts, and they got
Yeah.
so many people in their ears, and you got so much
Right.
going on, and you had, and you're just human beings because you got relational issues. You got some guys were married, some kids had kids, and so you have
Yep.
all the same issues everybody else has. You just have more money,
Right.
and that doesn't always solve all the
Solve
problems.
any
That doesn't
problems?
solve your
No, it doesn't
problem.
solve. Makes it worse.
So he was the real deal. And I actually, when my last year after I was with Philly 6 and I was in Miami then for 2, and I was my last year I went to San Francisco, and I was, God was kind of calling me away from the game then because I had committed my life to Him,
Hmm.
just because of the influence of guys like Reggie. And
Yeah.
you get to that place where everything's the lights don't glitter as bright, that the parties
Right.
aren't as, and a guy invited me to a Bible study, and he said, first time I heard the gospel, I heard there's a God that created you, loved you, and he gave up the glory of heaven to come to, the throne of glory, to come to the earth, to be the humility of a cross, to die for your sins. And I went, wow, I want to be
Yeah.
forgiven. And that changed. I received Christ, and it changed me. And from that point on, football was different to me. It was no longer who I was. I was defined
Right.
by a holy God, and it was different. And
It was just
so
what
I
you
was,
did. Yeah. It's not
so,
who you are. It's what you did.
yeah. So as I was in Miami, and I went to San Francisco, then God was, it's time to go. And
Hmm.
matter of fact, when I did, I said, you know what, Lord, I'm going to listen. And I walked away. Reggie was in Green Bay. They just brought him up. They had brought him up there, and they said, hey, Reggie's up here. We're going to make a push for the Super Bowl. And I went, wow, because you want to make the team, you want to start, and then you want to go to the Super Bowl. Everybody
Right.
wants to get there.
Right.
That was it.
Right.
And but I went home, I prayed about it, and the Lord said, "Now I got something else for you." And I went into youth ministry then, which was way more rewarding. But Reggie was the real deal. That's what I wanted to say. I talked to a guy named Darryl Strawberry, and
Hmm.
Darryl's a Christian now, and we did an event together. And he said, he had given his life to Christ, but he never got discipled. And he was in LA. He was playing for the Dodgers, ran into the wall, and hurt his shoulder. And he said, so he had to get on painkillers and went back into the world. He kind of like fell back into, backslid. And
Right.
he was struggling, to church, back to the party world, church, just like I was when I first. But then someone showed up. He was in Philadelphia. They were playing the Phillies, and somebody knocked on the door. And he went to the door. And it was Reggie White.
Oh,
And
wow.
Reggie said to him, he said, Darryl, he said, listen, I know you're struggling, but you need to come back to the Lord. And he said, and that was the change. He came back.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
Reggie was something else, man. What a blessing. Sometimes
yeah.
the good Lord takes them young, takes the good ones young sometimes.
Yeah.
I do believe that. So to talk about this transformation, I went through kind of the same thing myself after my divorce, reborn, and decided to give my life to Christ and started coaching. I was hurting, so I figured reading the Bible tells you when you're hurting, help somebody else. So I was wasting my talents, decided to get into coaching, and I fell in love with coaching. Did it for 20 years, coached my son, at Catholic high school here in Pensacola. Talk
Yeah.
about coaching your boys and coaching, getting into coaching.
Well, when I left the game, I got born again in a non-denominational church, Calvary Chapel of Philadelphia. That's if you saw the movie Jesus Revolution, Chuck Smith, that's the Calvary Chapel route, where Calvary Chapel started. So, Pastor Joe Fost and so given my life to Christ, I was born again and walked away from the game. And it was, I was just working in the work world because I had to support my family at that time. I got married. I had 2 children at the time. And so I always thought football was the problem. I had to put it away. And, as I prayed, God, if you surrender it to me, I was reading about Abraham. If you surrender your life to me, I can make it a miracle. I could make it. And I thought, all right, Lord, what about? So we started talking to the pastor because he had a prayer. When I first went up to receive Christ, he said to me, my prayer is someday we have a school and we can raise up godly men and women to change the world. And he said, maybe even have a football team. And I went, and at that point, I was like, well, it doesn't have nothing to do with me because I was still playing. And then, so when I was in his office and we were talking about it, and they bought a building and they're going to open a school. And I said, Joe, I said, I think we can have a discipleship ministry and use football to do that. We use this dumb game. I don't want to say dumb game, but we use this game to reach these guys' hearts. And he said, and we said, that's what we're going to do. So we started the first year of the school. We started a football team, middle school. And I had 22 kids that never played. I said, anybody play football here? They all said, no. I said, well, good. We don't have to break any bad habits. So
that's a positive outlook right there, brother.
We started from square one and foundations and angles and George Hill and all that stuff, buddy, and all that stuff flooded back in there, but now is being used for a higher purpose about foundational. Yeah. What's foundational in your life? What can you press off and have impact in? Or are you getting impacted? Are you gathering your feet and dropping your hips? When you got to remember these things, so they would sit on a line and I'd say, we're going to learn the block. And they'd say, great. They thought they're going to hit. And I used to go. And so I said, all right, get on the line, get your stance. So they got their stance. I said, now take your first step. This is your power step. I said, now this is the most important step. It's got to be a quick jab step, firm foundation step. I said, now just hold. And then I would walk up and down and talk to them about scripture and things in the Bible and foundations and why. So their legs would start shaking and they'd go, when are we going to? And so I'd say, okay, we're done. 15 minutes, they'd be in that position. And I said, now tomorrow we're going to learn to take the ground step. We're going to take the ground. And they're like, when are we going to hit? I'd say, you're not ready yet. So we went through that and built that foundation, but we used biblical principles to do it. And so,
great idea.
So we built it as a discipleship program. The second year, they expanded to a high school. So we had pre-K all the way up to high school. So we started a high school team. We were independent because we weren't, ready for a league yet. So we would have to find people to play. And we were 1A. So we were very small, which in Pennsylvania goes all the way up to 6A.
Right.
And so we had to play small teams and we would get beat because we just didn't have a lot of experience. But every team would come up to us after the game and say, you guys are the hardest hitting, hardest working team we've ever. Because I only had 20 kids, 15 of them had to play both ways in special teams. So I used to have to run them like Buddy ran us. And so I used to run with them so that they wouldn't feel, and as you go on in years, you start going, I got to find somebody to do this for me. I can't keep doing this. But you started to see this change in their lives. Like the one, I put 2 guys up against each other and this one smaller guy, it was a guard, a tough kid, but he was light. And this bigger kid who was a defensive tackle. And I said, now you remember everything we taught you. Take your power step, take the ground steps, keep your angles, drive you. And so, of course, he's looking at the guy, he's what he sees. And he sees this big guy and he forgets all the first. So I blow the whistle and he gets blown back. And I said, look at me. I said, you didn't remember what we taught you. I said, remember the foundation, remember the step, concentrate on it, focus. Now just do it. Mm-hmm. And here comes this kid. He does it, takes this power step, takes ground, bam, he gets under this kid, picks him up, drives him down the field. And that just opened their eyes to say, this God could be real in your life. It just,
Wow.
it made the intangible things of a God that's unseen, visible, and
Right.
experiential, that he could come into their lives and change their hearts and change their lives for the glory of God. And that's what we built it on. So then we would say to teams after the games, we'd say, hey, you want to pray with us? Yeah, we'll pray with you, because they beat us.
Yeah.
So we'd pray with them, we'd pray for them, and God watch over them, and they come to know God as their Savior, Jesus or Savior. So then we started winning. We get into a league, and then we start winning. Now we go to teams, hey, you want to pray with us? No, man, we don't want to pray with you.
No way. No,
because now
really?
we're winning. And so we started getting into the playoffs.
That's an interesting dynamic.
So there was a lot of like, the David and Goliath. We would go play the big Pennsylvania cold cracking teams when we get into playoffs, and
wow,
some incredible stories of courage that these young men
overcoming intangibles, overcoming talent.
So, yeah.
Wow, beautiful thing, man. How long is the school? How long have you been coaching? Are you still?
Well, I coached there for 24 years.
Oh my gosh, 24 years.
And it was a youth ministry, and I also did other youth ministry. And then we just kind of God was calling me away at times. It felt like he was pulling me to something else. But we started running out of kids. We were down to 14 kids, and not all of them played. And it was just it was kind of time. And so the team was they still have sports, and the school's still there. They just don't have football.
Okay. Tell us about your family, Mike. Tell us about your kids, and how many grandchildren do you have?
Yeah, my sons played for me, which was, again, like you had said, is the greatest honor. So they were, I never wanted them to play football. I took my son out in the backyard when he was 6. He said, Dad, I want to play football. I said, no, you don't. He said, yes, I do. I said, no, you don't. And I said, so I put equipment on him. I took him out in the back, and it was hot summer, and I ran him up hills. But I gave him a Buddy Ryan workout.
Oh, okay.
And
trying to run him off.
Yeah, he's sweating. He's breathing hard. And I said, you still want to play football? He said, yeah. I said, you didn't get this. We're coming out here again tomorrow. So I did that for a week, and he didn't break. So I had to let him fly.
It's because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
Well, now I would coach the high school game. And of course, then I left there. I had to leave there and go coach his little league team, because I just said there's a lot of crazy people in little league sports.
Right,
Anybody that's going through little league sports, some of the coaches are crazy. So now I'm running back and forth between two fields. But so my son played, and my other son played. They both played in Division II, local Millersville, and my other son went to play at Liberty University down in Virginia, Lynchburg, Virginia. And, so my wife, Lynn, is from Pottstown, PA, the greatest treasure of my life, the best decision I ever made in my life.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful.
And then my daughter was very athletic, and I got to coach her in softball and basketball.
Oh, cool.
And I coached my little kids' little league baseball team. So I was always in coaching, because it was a chance to have an impact on kids' lives, but different coaching girls than boys, because girls, boys, you'd say, get out in the field. We're going to do infield. Let's go. The girls, you'd have to show up and go, so how was your day? They didn't share a little, and we talk, and they'd go, and then so-and-so, and they'd reprocess the day, and I'd go, everything would quiet down, and I'd go, who wants to take infield? And they look around, they go, yeah, let's take some infield. So we'd go infield.
It's very different. Yeah, very different.
It was good. So I have my two sons, Josh and Michael, and then my daughter, Kelly. They're all married now. I have 4 grandkids, all girls.
Oh, really? All girls?
Yeah. Oh, wow. So I get to play the Barbies and the little dogs and stuff. So it's great.
What a joy! What a joy, man. Hey, who? I got one last question. Who do you think would be a good guest to have on the show?
Oh boy. Too bad Buddy's not around or still alive, or George.
How about Coach Cower? How about Coach Cower?
Oh yeah, do you have his number?
I would love to have Coach Cower on it. He's been on my bucket list for years.
Yeah, Bill has done some stuff, because I do stuff with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I work with. I run the camp. Well, it was used to be at Kutztown. So I run the football portion of the camp, and it was just down at Liberty University, the East Coast Conference, the East Coast camp. And I touched base with him right before that because he was coming out. He was coming out to speak at an FCA event.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, he would be a great guest.
Yeah, it'd be great, man. He was something else, boy. Thanks, Mike.
Great old school coach, though.
Yeah, he was a great old school coach. Because he, it just seemed like the guys could trust him, and he wouldn't lie to you, and wouldn't play any games or anything like that. So he was a great coach.
Yeah,
but,
he definitely was.
Yeah, it's crazy what coaching's going on now, isn't it? Crazy to fire the Bills coach.
It
was absurd.
Well, the loyalties are gone. It's not
loyalties are gone. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, it's not what it used to be. I mean, you don't even have a chance to build anything. Look at college. I mean, you can't even build. You got the portal. You can't build anything. So think about what the impact to these high school kids now. Because if you got it, like all the Division I schools had to lower their rosters from, I think it was 135 or something down to like 100 or 108 or something.
Yeah.
So 25 or 30 guys are in the portal. So if you're a coach that has to win in 3 years, you can't wait to develop a high school kid.
Right.
Unless he's that talented. You got to go to the portal. You got to go to guys that have, or to have talent. They've been in the big time. They're used to college football.
Mm-hmm.
Because so you got, 3 years, at the most 3 years or 5 that you got to win. And even in the pros, I mean, it's
just a storybook.
That's Paul. If you play long enough, it's a business. It's all
it is a business, and the mature guys, 24 and 25, 26-year-old, will beat 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds all day long. And Sig knew that, but his staff really got him ready. And before you can beat the other team, you got to stop from beating yourself. Making mistakes and stuff. You know that better. You called all the plays, and you had to be smarter than anybody on the field because
you had to know
DBs. DBs know the linebacker drops, but they don't care about the D line. D linemen just know theirs; they don't care about the DBs. But you have to drop. Linebackers have to drop in the zone, and you have to cover gaps. So you have to know the whole defense.
Yeah, and Buddy's defense, everything was on the field. So and there was 10 guys at every time they would shift. Joe Gibbs, the Washington coach, he knew that we were doing everything on the field, so he would just start shifting guys. And so every time they'd shift, I'd have to change the front, and nobody studied. So I'd go to the sidelines and I'd say, "Buddy, none of these guys are studying." He goes, "That's why I have you out there." So
you had to line them up, Mike. You had to get all the guys lined up.
So the one game I come to the side, we're playing the Dolphins, Dan Marino, and he's the blitz. We're blitzing him because he just wanted to get the Marino. So we're blitzing. We can't get to him because he just boom, get rid of the ball. So I come to this, and they're saying, "Tell him we got to get out of the blitz." So I go to the sideline. I said, "Buddy, we got to get out of the blitz." I said, "We're not getting to him, and it's one-on-one. It's mismatches. They're picking us apart." He goes, "Listen to me. I drew it up. They're not running it right." He goes, "But go out there and tell them to run it right." So I go in the huddle. I go, "What'd he say?" I go, "You guys ain't running it right." So
I turn around to the DBs and say, "Listen, you got to hold off on those the quick 3-step drops, man.
Yeah,
we got to get to them."
Yeah, that's it. I mean, and hey, listen, Belichick was one of those guys that held his assistant coaches to a higher standard than he held the players. He would say to his assistants, hey, like the DB coach, he'd say, "Hey, they gained 300 yards this last game. What are you doing over there?" He would charge his coaches to say, "Get them in line. Go get these guys." So I mean, when you have that kind of leadership, and that's, if you look at coaching, I mean, you know this, Paul, as a coach, your greatest jobs are administrative and motivation. You got to keep everybody pointed, keep them focused, and motivate them. You got to get them ready and keep everybody disciplined, because that's the hardest thing, is keeping that locker room pointed. It's like, because everybody's got pull and tugs all over the place. You got different backgrounds, different personalities, different this.
You're only as good as your assistant coaches, right, Mike? You know,
Right.
because the assistant coaches spend 95% of the time with the kids. So
Yeah.
if they're not performing, the assistant coaches have. And I would look at myself if my DBs didn't perform. I would go to my head coach and apologize and say, "Hey, I didn't do my job. Should I resign?" No, I did that once.
And that's it. And I used to tell I'd tell pastors that I worked with, I'd say, pastor's a lot like being a head coach. I said, you got assistants that are looking at your job, thinking they can do it better, and that's what they want your job. I said, so it's hard to find just a good assistant that says, this is where I'm called to be, this is what I'm doing, and this, I'm going to do it well, you know?
Yeah, right.
But
wow.
It changes
What
everything.
a story. What a beautiful story, Mike. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show and sharing it. And we got to chronicle your story, and I appreciate you taking the time to tell it.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, really Mike. Have a great one, buddy.
All right, you too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. Mike Reichenbach. Beautiful stories brought to you by Sandy Sansing Chevrolet. You know, here on Coach's Corners, we try to inspire and educate the mind to think, the heart to feel, and the body to act. Hope you learned something today from Mike. I know I did. What a great story. Have a great sports week. Everybody stay tuned for these important messages. Without these great sponsors, this just wouldn't be possible. So long, everybody.
When it comes to buying your next car, truck, or SUV, you need a team that puts you first. Here at the Sandy Sansing dealerships, we're proud to serve Pensacola and the Gulf Coast with the best selection, trusted service, and deals that work for your family. Just like great coaches build great teams, Sandy Sansing builds lasting relationships with every customer who walks through our doors. Because when it comes to finding your next vehicle, there's only one name to remember. Sandy Sansing can.
That's you trying to fix the plumbing yourself to save a few bucks. Doing things yourself doesn't always end well. The same goes for insurance. That's why Auto Owners works with local independent agents who tailor coverage to meet your needs and offer discounts for life, home, car, and business insurance. Because sometimes you need a professional to get the job done right. That's simple human sense.
Are you riding around in a filthy vehicle? Dirty car no more. Visit Ronnie's Car Wash today to get it shining in no time. They have 3 convenient locations with another coming soon. The unlimited monthly wash packages start as low as $14.95 per month with free vacuums, multi-purpose spray, and towels. Visit them in Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, and soon Crestview. Don't wait, wash today. Be sure to see Ronnie's Car Wash on Facebook to see the latest specials and discounts. You'll be riding and shining in no time.
75 years of service and high tech today. It's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348. High tech is a term often applied to advanced services and products in today's marketplace. And today, glass is much more than a simple pane of brittle, see-through stuff we hit baseballs through when we were kids. Glass is now a product with unique flexibility in both performance and application. And Pensacola Glass Company is growing right along. That's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348.
When it comes to buying your next car, truck, or SUV, you need a team that puts you first. Here at the Sandy Sansing dealerships, we're proud to serve Pensacola and the Gulf Coast with the best selection, trusted service, and deals that work for your family. Just like great coaches build great teams, Sandy Sansing builds lasting relationships with every customer who walks through our doors. Because when it comes to finding your next vehicle, there's only one name to remember. Sandy Sansing can.